people messaging me today saying they thought they were buying tickets to the dinner for the 75th. So for those of you smart enough to have figured out there's 2 events, congratulations. And we've made sure that there's lots of items up the back there, so you'll be well rewarded for your intelligence. So the other event is going to be held on the 16th of November. That's to celebrate the AHS's 75th anniversary. There's going to be multiple talks on the night. Liz Vella from the Australian Reptile Park / Aussie Ark is going to be giving a talk, and Ty Park from Florida is going to be coming along. So for those of you who don't know much about Ty, he deep pockets. He just spent $8 million building his reptile zoo sanctuary thingo in Florida. He's got over 250 species, so he's claiming it's the largest reptile zoo in the world. And he's going to be talking about how that all came to be and the species he's got and all that sort of stuff. Beyond that, I think Glenn or Jerry is going to be talking about herpetofauna. That is going to be signing off. This year we're going to have herpetofauna instead of the red-bellied courier. It'll be the final print edition of herpetofauna, so we wanted to make it special. It's going to be the biggest volume that's been produced, so hopefully it can all come together by then. Glenn? This will be the 2016 edition that's coming out. Anyway, moving right along. Thank you to Rick for allowing us to host another launch for one of his books. We're thrilled of the relationship the AHS has been able to create with Rick over recent times, and yeah, we really appreciate his allowing us to work with him for nights like tonight. Thank you to Georgia Ward-Fear, who is a first timer at the AHS giving a talk. Hopefully we'll have her back for a longer talk sometime next year. And last but not least, thank you to Chelsea. Where's Chelsea? Well, you'll see her. So 2 days ago, Chelsea was sitting at home in North Carolina, and she's made the trip over here despite the US election and being in one of the sun states where it could go any way. But talk to her about that after the talk. I'm sure she'd love to talk politics with you. So we're thrilled that Chelsea's made the trip over, and I'd like to say thank you for all the hard work she's done to make Urban Reptiles finally come to fruition. She's wonderful to work with. As I mentioned, the bar's not open. Glenn Shea is widely regarded as the smartest person in any room, and you'll note that he went and bought 2 beers. So yeah, be like Glenn. At the moment, the bottles of red wine are $35, but as the night goes on, I'm going to start charging more. So yeah, come and see me if you want a bottle of red. What else have we got? The rest of the year for the AHS. So we're done with the city. Our meetings at Pitt Street have come to an end.
Starting now.
Starting right now. They just kept putting the prices up, and it was problematic for people to get in there, and they're charging me $30 to park out the front. It's just not fun. So we've looked at quite a few venues and come across one in Burwood, which is fantastic. It's going to completely change the way the meetings happen. With the doors from the meeting, we've got multiple sets of French doors that open onto a parkland, and there's barbecues and beers on warm summer evenings and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to really change the way we run meetings, and we're very excited about that. In September, we've got Damien Esquire, who will be giving a presentation. For those of you unfamiliar, Damien, amongst many other things, was the person that did the revision of Anterasia, and it was the person responsible for the extinction of Stimson's bison. In October, we've got Ricky Spencer, November the 75th, and the first Sunday of December, the Reptile Park Christmas party. That's about it. We'll talk more about raffle and auction items and all that as the night goes on. Chelsea will be giving a presentation now on Urban Reptiles. After that, we're going to have some food come in, and then we'll be moving on with the night. So please welcome Chelsea.
be here. It's great to be back. And it's really nice to see all the familiar faces that I recognize in the crowd, and really nice to see new faces that I don't know. I'm going to be talking about Urban Reptiles, which came out earlier this year. And just before getting into the book, I'd just like to introduce myself. Yeah, it's great to be back. I've been a reptile lover for all of my life, like probably 99% of us in this room. I used to catch lizards outside of my urban home in Georgia, and have loved them ever since. And that interest piqued my interest in coming to Australia overall. I've wanted to come to Australia to learn about the reptiles and amphibians here since I was in early high school, and really put some efforts into that. Once I graduated from college, I applied for some research positions out at Western Sydney University and ended up getting a position there. And I moved over in 2011 and met Michael Duncan, who many of you would know. And he put me in touch with Chris Williams, and then I joined the Australian Herpetological Society in 2011, and have been working with everyone there ever since. However, I did move back to the United States in 2022, so I was no longer able to be a committee member. But in the time that I was here in Australia, we produced 3 books with the AHS. And as I mentioned, I am back in the States now, but still really enjoy working with Chris, and hope there's many books to come. And just an aside, I love reptiles and amphibians. It's a hobby, but my career is as a research scientist in the agricultural industry. So that being said, we'll talk today about Urban Reptiles. I'll tell you about the birth of the book, how it came to be, and its final form came in 2 parts: The Usual Suspects, which is the field guide section of the book, and then part 2, Us and Them, is more of the essay-based literature review part of the book, where we discuss how urbanization impacts reptile populations throughout Australia. And after describing the book a little bit, I'll talk about the impacts of urbanization. And then this book was a huge effort that took national effort, really. People all over Australia contributing to bring it to be. So I'd like to say thank you, and then also just move on to questions if there are any. And also encourage people to take photos of urban reptiles. As you'll see, this was a challenge for us. So the book kind of had a roundabout way of coming to fruition. We pitched to Reed New Holland Publishers, who published our previous 2 books, idea for Predators and Prey, which would have had the same format: full-page photo, beautiful photo of reptiles or birds, or prey, predator versus prey. And Reed New Holland did not really like this idea because it came across as too gory, wasn't the right content for maybe selling to kids and families. So they knocked us back, even though that's a really cool idea. And then we presented an idea for Urban Reptiles, which would still have the same format, but a little bit more of like a field guide feel, so having a note and description, but still a full-page photo of the reptile set in an urban setting. And they loved this idea, so they sent us a contract in 2018, and we went on our way to start creating the book. Well, turns out that there are not that many photos of reptiles in urban settings, high-quality photos. There's many phone photos, but not really nice quality photographer-grade photos out there. So we kind of started to get into a little bit of a pickle, and we were finding photos more in a suburban setting. So we were starting to feel like, okay, well, we're able to find this content for the suburban element of it, and the urban side of it was more coming out to be the literature review and discussing how urbanization is impacting reptiles throughout Australia. So more of a story form, and we went back to them and said, hey, there's 2 books here. Can we go with the suburban idea? And they said no. So we fought a little bit with the idea and came up with the idea that we'd have it in 2 parts, which came to be Usual Suspects, being the field guide side, and then part 2, which is Us and Them, which we discussed the impacts of urbanization. And we did think we were going to include a third section in the book, which would have focused on snake catcher stories, which is a really cool idea. However, once we started investigating that, it seemed like there was a little bit too much legwork involved to get the stories from snake catchers. We would have had to do a lot of interviews with people, and then also the quality of the photos that snake catchers are able to get during those times where they're actually trying to catch animals is not the greatest. So still a really cool idea, and maybe we will move on to do another project with that. So just to go a little bit more in depth for the two parts of the book, the usual suspects is the field guide section. We focus on the 8 capital cities, and per city we chose 15 species that are the most common, and this was a huge amount of work to contact people across Australia that have the expertise, many of whom are in this room now that helped us with this, to really dial in what are the most common animals that people are seeing in urban settings in those cities. That resulted in 120 unique photos, so even though there are species that are represented across Sydney and Melbourne, for instance, there's the similar species, the photos are not the same. We really tried to get photos from the area that we were focused on, and that we were largely able to do that, but there are some instances where we had to select photos from, say, Melbourne and use them for Canberra, for instance. Another element of the field guide section is the urban adaptation rating, and this is basically a scale of how adapted the animal has become to an urban setting. For instance, the death adder is a very common animal to see in the Sydney area. However, it's not typically found like in a super urban setting, whereas a blue tongue is obviously, you're tripping over those as you walk to your car in the morning. So blue tongues have a really high urban adaptation rating. And we also have a venom rating. And here, and as I mentioned, it was very difficult for us to find urban settings, but this is just an example of what we were kind of looking for. And if you kind of leave this talk and are interested in taking more photos of these animals in what is their habitat, it's not a natural setting, but it is their habitat now, please continue to take photos. These are great. They represent the species as they are, easy to identify, which is the purpose of a field guide, but they also have that urban element. But we went with the more natural setting, and they're gorgeous photos. Ken Griffiths with the diamond python, and Shane Black with the eastern water skink. I love looking at these photos and working with the photographers because the photos are just amazing. So the field guide section has the venom rating, and obviously it's not venomous, the diamond python, the description, length, diet, reproduction notes, and the adaptation rating. So that's just an example. You've probably already looked through the book at this point and know. And then part 2 again is the essay-based literature review of how urbanization impacts reptile populations, and also the human and reptile interactions that result from us encroaching on natural habitat. And the goal of this section and the book overall was to raise awareness and education about these animals that are so close to our home, and the hope is to also inspire conservation efforts as urbanization continues. And I'll just go over some of the key points of how urbanization is impacting reptile populations. So urban expansion is continuing. It's not going to stop unless, well, it's probably not going to stop. Urban land is increasing by about 1% per year annually. However, Australia is growing a bit faster than the world, at about 1.2 to 1.6% per year, and it's expected to continue. And that being said, urbanization does have significant threats on reptile populations throughout Australia, and a lot of the threats are due to habitat destruction. Land fragmentation can cause issues with genetic flow. Populations of species will not be able to interbreed, which can cause the species in general to reduce genetic variability, and that can be catastrophic for the population or the species to survive. And then also agriculture can impact habitat by destroying burrows through plowing, and also chemical application that also kills food foraging sources and resources. There's also direct mortality that occurs, traffic, roadkill. This happens regularly with all species, and also through pets. Cats kill an enormous amount of reptiles per year, and also humans that don't understand or are afraid of reptiles. This happens regularly. And then an indirect threat of urbanization is in introduced species that then become invasive as a result of really being successful in Australia. And an example of this is the red-eared slider turtle from the United States. It's one of the most traded turtles in the world, and it has been shown to impact freshwater turtles in Australia negatively. So these are some of the threats. However, we are talking about adapted reptiles here, and animals are, the 15 species per city are quite adapted to these settings. And it's largely because there are benefits of an urban environment. There's, for instance, for reptiles in particular, warmer temperatures will allow reptiles to forage for longer in these environments and bask longer and move around longer. It has a benefit to their ability to live. There's more permanent water sources, especially during drought periods, which Australia is famously known for. And food sources, for instance, the Asian house gecko is very successful in Australia in urban environments, partially due to insect availability around residential lights. And another impact of urbanization is human and reptile interaction. As we encroach on their environment and as these animals become more adapted to urban settings, we experience them more, which can be dangerous in the case of snake bite, which is a problem. But I think that this is an opportunity for education and inspiration in this space, primarily for bolstering conservation efforts and for future planning for city environments as we move forward. There's devastated populations of reptiles that have really been hit hard by urbanization. For instance, the pygmy blue-tongued lizard in Adelaide and the western swamp tortoise in Western Australia. They've really struggled with primarily habitat destruction. However, there are recovery plans that are already in place and are quite successful, and in these instances sometimes there's habitat establishment for these animals, and then there's important work in rescue, for instance what Wild and Turtle New South Wales are doing to rescue turtles before dams are completely drained and these animals perish due to development purposes. And also I think Australia in general is good at creating green space within their cities, but raising awareness and appreciation about urban reptiles helps for these initiatives to keep going. The public will raise a hand and contribute to these conservation programs, as well as city planning to hopefully increase green space habitat within an urban setting so that animals have a refuge, and also just for pure enjoyment after they realize how wonderful and beautiful these animals are to spend time with and to enjoy. So overall, urbanization is continuing, and it does have very negative impacts on reptile populations for a myriad of reasons. However, there are benefits, and animals do adapt to them, and as you will see through looking through the book, there's many animals that are successful in these settings. And with increased reptile and human interactions, we have the opportunity to raise awareness and appreciation for them that will hopefully help continue conservation efforts and outreach, and hopefully encourage the continued habitat creation and maintenance as we move forward with urban planning, as we continue to expand. We will not stop. So This is an overview of the book. I hope you really enjoy it, and I just want to take some time to highlight the 40 photographers that contributed high quality photos to the book, as well as very urban snapshots of what we're used to seeing in our own homes. It was great to work with these people, and this is one of my favorite parts of creating these books, is working with people and getting in touch and feeding off of their passion for the subject. And in many cases, there's a lot of hard work that goes into these photos. You're going out at like 2 a.m. We're going into a very uncomfortable bush setting and getting dirty and getting down in the dirt to take photos of these animals, and it's just really fun. And we wouldn't have been able to do this book without these contributions. And also, we would not be able to produce this book without the help from many people in this room and people that are not able to be with us tonight, through proofreading, fact-checking of the research that we did, and also just being lending an ear for ideas and the production of the book. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that contributed to it. As I said, we signed the contract in 2018, and it just was published this year, so it's really great to see it come to fruition and be here. So thank you, everyone. Awesome. Any questions? Chris will be happy to answer all of them.
What are there any common characteristics of the reptiles that are doing well in urban environments?
There are. Non-specific diets is very common. So part of having additional food sources in city environments, non-selective feeding, and also larger thermal ranges, tolerances, that helps for adapting to an urban environment.
I have a question. Were many of the photos set up for the purposes of this book?
No, actually. Well, so we did do a call for urban photos. So I can't say yes or no on those. Somebody could have gone and set them up for that, but no, it was usually, because we were very specific about the location of the animal, we really had to kind of do a lot of digging and reach out to photographers to see if they had photos from Sydney, for instance, of this specific species. It was quite challenging. Some of the photos, I believe it was Jules Farquhar, it was 15 years ago, some of the photos that he contributed.
Yeah, some of them are quite tricky because, like you said, with the snake catching ones, like you see that one on the right there, it's not too bad, but sometimes there's a lot of mess behind.
Oh,
that,
yeah.
Like in a yard or an urban setting, there's quite a lot of mess, but some of these are quite picturesque, obviously,
Yes.
with the city behind or something.
That's actually one of Chris's photos. So
Yeah,
that one,
no,
is that one set up, Chris?
It's up in my house,
But yeah, I would say I would really love to see more urban photos, because it's they're out there. It's not, maybe it doesn't feel as picturesque because it's not in a natural environment, but these are what we're seeing the most of. Any other questions?
Did you have any, was this maybe not part of the book, but are there any recommendations for helping native animals to be in your urban spaces, or?
Yeah, creating habitat. Payne is very good at this, creating habitat, and if you, I would recommend talking to Payne about this. Do you have any suggestions?
Oh, well, like Chelsea said, the water availability and temperature availability and for thermoregulation for the reptiles. So what we say usually is if someone installs a frog pond in their yard, then they're going to attract frogs and eventually snakes and lizards and birds and whatever else, So just any sort of green space that you can encourage in urban areas is going to be those refuges for all of our herpafauna to come and enjoy. That's why golf courses and cemeteries and places like that are sort of great hotspots in urban landscapes for reptiles and all wildlife really.
And maybe don't have outdoor pets. Or cats, dogs, rather. Thanks, Kate.
Awesome. Anything else?
Thank you, Chelsea. That was
Thank you,
good.
everyone.
I don't know if it's life imitating art, but I was just sitting up the back, just sitting there.